It is 3:17 in the morning. You're just lying there staring at the ceiling, your mind is completely racing, and you're thinking to yourself, well, that's it. I'm literally never going to fall asleep again. It is such an incredibly frustrating, uniquely modern feeling, isn't it? But why is it that today so many of us struggle to get a good night's rest when our ancient ancestors seemingly didn't? Well, let's explore the fascinating truth about prehistoric rest in today's explainer.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the sheer irony here is actually kind of wild. A modern human can be lying on a high-tech memory foam mattress, completely safe behind locked doors, resting in a perfectly climate-controlled room, and still be absolutely crippled by insomnia. Meanwhile, our ancient ancestors were out there trying to catch some shut-eye while hyenas were literally laughing in the distance. Insects were constantly testing their personal boundaries, and the nearest thing to emergency services was just, a cousin holding a burning stick. So the obvious assumption is that ancient humans were just so exhausted they dropped instantly and slept like rocks. But the archaeological and anthropological evidence, it actually suggests something much, much stranger.
Section 1. The Modern Sleep Trap. Rethinking the 3 a.m. Crisis.
To really understand our modern sleep trap, we've got to go back in our evolutionary journey, like way back, long before anyone was blaming blue light for ruining civilization. Millions of years ago, our primate ancestors had a pretty sensible setup. They slept safely up in the trees. It kept them away from predators. But eventually, our lineage made the extremely questionable decision to become terrestrial, and we moved to the ground. Now sure, this offered more space and made social gathering easier, but it also placed a sleeping animal directly inside the prehistoric food delivery system. A motionless primate on the ground isn't exactly intimidating. It's essentially an appetizer with hands.
Because we were suddenly so vulnerable, human sleep just couldn't evolve as some isolated biological process anymore. It actually came to depend entirely on technology, on cooperation, and on controlling our environment. Quite literally, before we invented the bed, we had to invent the bedroom. And the absolute most critical piece of this brand new bedroom was fire. A maintained fire provided warmth, light, smoke to ward off insects, and this crucial protective boundary against predators. It created a visible, safe, social center where our nervous systems could finally, allow us to drop our guard.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly where modern humans have gone wrong. For hundreds of thousands of years, our bodies evolved to expect very specific signals to initiate sleep. We're talking about the cooling of the evening air, fading natural darkness, deep physical exhaustion from surviving the day, and the comforting sound of familiar voices nearby. Now, our modern bedrooms absolutely remove the physical danger, for sure, but they also tragically strip away those exact ancient biological signals our nervous systems crave. We stare at artificial daylight on screens, we keep the temperature perfectly static, we isolate ourselves behind walls, and then we just demand unconsciousness at exactly 10:30 p.m. Let me tell you, evolution never agreed to that appointment.
Which brings us to Section 2, the first human beds, engineering comfort.
So how did our ancestors actually solve their sleep difficulties? Well, over at Border Cave in South Africa, researchers found traces of ancient beds dating back roughly 200,000 years. Early humans weren't just collapsing wherever exhaustion defeated them, they were actually actively engineering their environment. Step 1, they laid down a base layer of ash. This separated sleepers from the damp ground and acted as a brilliant prehistoric pest control to block crawling insects. Then they added grasses, specifically from the broad-leafed camper bush family, which naturally contains aromatic chemicals that repel insects. But these weren't isolated, quiet bedrooms. They were multi-purpose living spaces where the whole group worked, dined, and rested together.
This evidence from Border Cave reveals a very old, deeply ingrained human instinct. When sleep was difficult, we changed the environment. We did not immediately assume there was something wrong with the sleeper. Just let that sink in for a second. If you are struggling to sleep, it is not a personal failure. Taking control of your sleeping environment to find comfort is an ancient, perfectly natural instinct.
Moving on to Section 3, the 8-hour sleep myth, deconstructing the wilderness coma. Now this brings us to a comforting, highly romanticized myth that we really need to dismantle right now. It's the idea that ancient humans enjoyed a flawless, uninterrupted 9-hour wilderness coma every single night. In reality, studies of traditional non-industrial societies living today without electric lighting, like the Hadza in Tanzania or the San in southern Africa, show that they actually only sleep about 6 to 7 hours. Really? Not the massive, continuous duration we modern folks constantly beat ourselves up over not getting.
Natural sleep is not necessarily longer sleep, and it definitely wasn't perfectly consistent. There were perfectly ordinary reasons an ancient human might be awake in the middle of the night. Think about it. Someone had to tend the fire. infants needed nursing. People had natural age-based variations in when they actually felt tired. Plus, you had late-night fireside conversations, shifting weather, and yeah, the occasional approaching predator. Temporary wakefulness was simply an accepted part of the night. It wasn't evidence that sleep itself was broken.
So the crucial point is how we interpret being awake. An ancient sleeper might wake up, listen to the camp, adjust their grass bedding, check the flames, hear the reassuring breathing of their group, and naturally drift right back to sleep. There was absolutely no clock to monitor, but a modern sleeper, we wake up and immediately enter a crippling feedback loop. We check the glowing numbers, calculate that we only have exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes left, predict tomorrow's failure, and become increasingly anxious while trying to force ourselves back into unconsciousness. And as we all know, anxiety is exceptionally good at keeping a brain awake.
Section 4. The Power of the Tribe. The Sentinel Hypothesis.
A prehistoric camp actually didn't need everyone asleep at exactly the same time. I mean, think about it. If every single member of a group entered a deep, 8-hour sleep simultaneously, the camp would become a literal predator's buffet with absolutely no security staff. There was no official night watch roster taped to the cave wall. Instead, the tribe itself was the alarm system. By sleeping near each other, our ancestors gained a sense of predictable safety. It was biological reassurance, a feeling that our modern locks and motion sensor cameras try, but often fail, to imitate. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how our natural, chaotic sleep variations actually kept the group alive. This is known as the Sentinel Hypothesis. Older adults naturally woke earlier, teenagers naturally stayed up later, parents with infants obviously had interrupted sleep, and across the entire night, these natural differences created overlapping periods of informal vigilance. Basically, someone was almost always awake, or at least stirring. A grandparent waking up before dawn might hear movement. A nursing mother might notice a dying fire. The whole group organically shared the burden of vigilance.
Which brings us to Section 5, Trusting the Night Again, Escaping the Clock.
You see, the modern world didn't actually eliminate the dangers surrounding sleep. It really just replaced them. The leopard lurking just outside the firelight, that became tomorrow's looming deadline. The hostile neighboring group, that morphed into an urgent work email. And the unpredictable, naturally flowing night turned into a glowing digital clock that quietly informs you that you have now failed to sleep for exactly 2 hours and 43 minutes. But here's the catch. Our nervous systems still treat this modern uncertainty with the exact same life-or-death seriousness as the leopard.
And this is exactly why you shouldn't be so hard on yourself. When you are staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., you are not a broken, defective human being. You are simply a prehistoric nervous system trapped in a world of clocks, constant digital notifications, and tomorrow morning expectations. Your brain is desperately searching for the comforting signals of the fire, the cooling evening air, and the safety of the tribe. But instead, it's getting isolation and artificial light.
The shift in how we interpret being awake is just massive. Our ancestors outside the cave could hear a hyena in the distance, look around, see that someone else was awake feeding the fire, and think, okay, we are probably safe. Today, we wake up, look at the alarm clock, and think, well, I've officially ruined Tuesday. Honestly, the hyena might have been easier. We've turned wakefulness into an immediate disaster, pursuing deep sleep so aggressively. And well, sleep is one of the few biological processes that becomes far more difficult the harder you actively try to pursue it.
Ancient humans absolutely had terrible nights too. They dealt with cold, rain, insects, and genuine predators. But they didn't carry the heavy modern belief that every single awakening was abnormal. Their sleep was flexible, communal, and perfectly imperfect. Ours is just rigidly measured. So the next time you find yourself awake in the quiet hours of the night, remember what sleep was actually built upon. Remember that temporary wakefulness sometimes completely belongs inside sleep. Try to be a little kinder to your prehistoric nervous system. After all, what if you stopped fighting the night and started trusting it?